The anatomy and physiology of the human brain. There are many mysteries on how human brain works. We can able to interpret the messages and able to understand simple and complex concept. That is the function of the brain. There are a series of connections in our brain which transmit impulses. The human brain is the epicenter of central nervous system, which controls the body's most vital tasks. Everything from movement of limbs and facial features to regulating bodily functions like breathing is sent as a message from different parts of the brain. Most of the information from our environment are transmitted to the brain and translated. Then, the brain will respond to certain stimuli from the environment. The brain can gather an information through our senses, such as sense of sight, smell, hear, touch, and taste. The brain is made up of two types of cells, neurons and glial cells, also known as neuroglia or glia. The neuron is responsible for sending and receiving nerve impulses or signals. Glial cells are non-neuronal cells that provide support and nutrition, maintain homeostasis, form myelin, and facilitate signal transmission in the nervous system. The brain is composed of neurons that has a specialized function, which is to receive and send signals all throughout in our body. The brain is composed of the brainstem, cerebellum, and cerebrum. Each part has its own function. The brainstem is the lower extension of the brain, located in front of the cerebellum and connected to the spinal cord. It consists of three structures: the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Many simple or primitive functions that are essential for survival are located here. Brainstem is responsible for regulating the heart rate, sleeping, eating, and breathing. The cerebellum is located at the back of the brain, beneath the occipital lobes. It is separated from the cerebrum by the tentorium. The cerebellum fine tunes motor activity or movement. Example is the fine movements of fingers as they perform surgery or paint a picture. It helps one maintain posture, sense of balance or equilibrium by controlling the tone of muscles and the position of limbs. The cerebrum, which forms the major portion of the brain, is divided into two major parts, the right and left cerebral hemispheres. The cerebrum is a term often used to describe the entire brain. A fissure or groove that separates the two hemispheres is called the great longitudinal fissure. The two sides of the brain are joined at the bottom by the corpus callosum. The cerebral hemispheres have several distinct fissures. By locating these landmarks on the surface of the brain, it can effectively be divided into pairs of lobes. Lobes are simply broad regions of the brain. The cerebrum, or brain, can be divided into pairs of frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital lobes. Each lobe may be divided, once again, into areas that serve very specific functions. The lobes of the brain do not function alone. They function through very complex relationships with one another. The frontal lobes are the largest of the four lobes responsible for many different functions. These include motor skills such as voluntary movement, speech, intellectual, and behavioral functions, while occipital lobes are located at the back of the brain and enable humans to receive and process visual information. They influence how humans process colors and shapes. The occipital lobe on the right interprets visual signals from the left visual space, while the left occipital lobe performs the same function for the right visual space. Parietal lobes. These lobes interpret simultaneously signals received from other areas of the brain, such as vision, hearing, motor, sensory, and memory. A person's memory and the new sensory information received gives meaning to objects. The parietal lobe gives an interpretation to the senses. Temporal lobes. These lobes are located on each side of the brain at about ear level and can be divided into two parts. One part is on the bottom or ventral of each hemisphere, and the other part is on the side or lateral of each hemisphere. The temporal lobe is responsible for the memory. Let's go on to the deep structures of the brain. Hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a small structure that contains nerve connections that send messages to the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus handles information that comes from the autonomic nervous system. Pituitary gland. The pituitary is a small gland attached to the base of the brain or behind the nose in an area called the pituitary fossa or sella turcica. The pituitary is often called the master gland because it controls the secretion of hormones. Pineal gland. This gland is an outgrowth from the posterior or back portion of the third ventricle. In some mammals, it controls the response to darkness and light. In humans, it has some role in sexual maturation, although the exact function of the pineal gland in humans is unclear. Thalamus. The thalamus serves as relay station for almost all information that comes and goes to the cortex. It plays a role in pain sensation, attention, and alertness. It consists of four parts: the hypothalamus, epithalamus, the ventral thalamus, and the dorsal thalamus. Basal ganglia. The basal ganglia are clusters of nerve cells surrounding the thalamus. It includes caudate, putamen, and globus pallidus. These nuclei work with the cerebellum to coordinate fine motions such as fingertip movements. Thank you for watching.